My name is Ronda Kelley. I'm a fiber and assemblage artist and I teach on the college level. I've been creative as an artist, creating things since probably around 5 years old or so. So I've been creating things for a long time. Even when I was a little girl in elementary school, I used to like to stitch my dolls. I would go and I would check out this one library book. It had a little doll pattern. And I would just make my little fiber dolls. Would make things for my Barbie. And by the time I got to high school, I was thinking that I definitely wanted to go into fashion. Excuse me. Definitely wanted to go into fashion. And I think there were a few things that backed me away from that. One of the things was I didn't want to deal with how cutthroat I perceived that particular industry to be. The other thing was I felt like I wanted to go in a more artistic route. So, but I went to school for graphic design probably because I felt like that was a safer route to go. And then ended up shifting my major because I wanted to get out of school to general art. And for a while I didn't think I was necessarily going to do anything artistic with fiber anymore, other than there was an occasion when I would put patterns that were from textiles in my work. And this is like in the early days of painting. And then sometimes I would actually put fabric in the painting. So there was still always this sense of connection I felt with fiber. But by the time I went back for my master's, I was already starting to create things that were wearable. And I think that that's what got me back into it. So when I went back for my master's, I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and just do this thing I've always loved, which is combining fashion with art. And so that is what triggered the fiber for me. But some of it are things that can hang on the wall or things that you can enter, so not all of it is wearable. One subject I teach is African American art, the other subject is African American history. Time-wise, it takes away from my ability to be creative, but information-wise, it fuels a lot of what I've done. So it's like I feel like I'm learning as I go, because you can never know all of it and there's always more. And so that's kind of the beauty of teaching the subjects that I teach. I really am passionate about those. And craft gives me an opportunity again to hone more skills and teach skills and think about things differently in terms of how I create. So that's a cool thing. So they can go hand in hand, but again, when you teach and then you have things to grade, it does take away from the actual time to put in to create. So I'm working on shifting it where it's the other way around, where I can do more things that are actually creative and teach because I still love it, but not as much, not where I have to do it, but because I can do it and I want to. Thinking about myself in the future in terms of what it is that would be ideal is that I feel that I will always teach on some capacity, whether it's getting paid as a lecturer or whether it is actually in a classroom setting, because I enjoy it very much. And I feel like I connect pretty well with people. I listen and I do my best to give feedback, and honest feedback. And I think that, and not just about the subject, but try to relate the subject to life circumstance, in real life circumstance. And I think students appreciate that. At least that's what I kind of get over the periods that I've been teaching, which is about 6 years solid now. The shift that I would love to see happen in my life is to actually do more of the creative time, put more creative time in, and then shift it and do not as much teaching. I plan on working on that futuristic goal by getting more paid lectures, getting paid to actually talk and to speak, and doing that for a short period of time, and then having the other time to create, raise my daughter, etc., etc. Okay, the piece that I'm wearing is about. It's a heavy piece. It's a heavy piece, and not the sense that it's heavy, but it's heavy in the sense that it's emotionally heavy. It has a lot to do. It's called "Seeing Through the Heart," and of course, in thinking about Kemetic stuff, you see the eye of what they call the eye of Ra right here. But Kemetic people, from my understanding, and what I truly feel about who they were, is that they understood how technology, the sciences, and nature, and the human all work together as one. And I think that they really had that down. And in having that down, I think that they lived in a way, now this is long, long ago, I'm talking about more than 10,000 years ago probably. They, excuse me, from what I can tell and understand about them, they knew how to live, for the most part, in harmony with nature, because they watched it so much, they studied it so much, and they tried to pattern their entire society around it. So I think and feel that they had very little wars, and that most of the time the way they operated their entire system was to see things through the heart. So there's rose quartz crystals, which is about heart energy, that's in here. And then there's also this locket from my grandmother, my maternal grandmother. It's not actually a locket, it's more like it was a makeup compact. And it actually opens where I put a picture of flowers on the inside. So I think it opens from. And then the mirror, I just left it cracked. You know, I said I wasn't going to worry about like beautifying that, because I thought that was kind of part of the character. And so she passed away, and my mother had this, and I felt like I just wanted to keep it to remind me of her. And I didn't know it was going to end up in jewelry, but I had the piece for a while and then ended up incorporating it in here. And so it's about an appreciation of where I come from long ago, but also my immediate genetic material also. The emotions, my emotions, and my spirituality, and I guess the spirituality for me is very emotional. But I think it's like that for anybody if you're on a spiritual path. I have not read anything, whether it is, what's that guy's name? The current Buddha right now, or the current Dalai Lama. And I don't know, you listen to anybody. Well, the only person I've listened to who sounds very kind of monotone is Eckhart Tolle. But even every once in a while, if you listen to some of his tapes, he has a certain amount of passion that he puts in there. So I think when people have certain belief systems, certain things that really work for their life, and for me personally, it really works for my life. So therefore, yes, I'm passionate about it. It's been too many different circumstances that personally I have experienced where it works for me. So, and being that I live in that sort of emotional, mental, and heart space all the time, it comes out in my art. It just, I don't see that, there's never a separation for me. It's like if I'm thinking about it, sometimes I'll write it, other times I will write and sketch about it. It depends. There's several future projects that I'm working on. More jewelry, more wearables. Some will be woven, some will be have wood parts attached to them. And the other project that I'm working on is a book. The book that I'm writing relates to, gosh, it's almost all-encompassing for me, because for me, looking at the body, working with the body, respecting the body, And then even what I put on my body, everything from soap to oils to things that make me smell good, all of that is usually natural, so, or as natural as I can get. And so that is like an important way for me to live, period. And that's just, it's kind of been coming along for even before I became vegetarian, but once I became vegetarian, and it was like I went through this tunnel, and spirituality happened, changes, a shift in spirituality happened, a shift in information happened, a shift in, well, in art a little bit, but it was more about information and spirituality, and then how I was deciding to take care of my body. That was like major, and it was as if, excuse me, it was as if I was running through a tunnel and everything was blurry. But I had to keep running because I had this space I had to get to. But it felt like that because I remember it was like a lot that, you know, like you download stuff in a computer and it does it all. It was like kind of like that. It felt like that. But so I had to learn to monitor things, learn to be, how to be independent thinker, and independent in terms of my spirituality too. That was interesting, you know, because even, you know, people think that it's only in the realm of church that you might have people who are bloodsuckers, but it can happen anywhere. And so it was really good. All the experiences, I regret absolutely none, because all have been good to lead me up to be where I am now, which I feel is like very strong in terms of knowing who I am, understanding who I am, enjoying who I am. And that for a while was not easy, but I didn't even know I was trying to go there. I just knew that things were changing and I was perceiving things differently. And then in retrospect, you look back and you see, oh, okay, so these things happened because it built a stronger me. And so I'm appreciative of that, even with the challenges, even with the different things that I went through. There was several things that I remember in particular while going through my journey, because when one makes major shifts in either how one behaves or how one thinks, it's not always easy. So counseling for me happened, and I can't say that I would never go to a counselor again, but now I'm like really clear when that person is trying to be helpful, or if they are trying to, because you know therapist actually spells the rapist, so it's if the person is trying to be controlling. And so that happened with me having to have people who were emotional or mental rapists, and having to deal with that allowed me to build stronger muscles in that area. So yeah, I'm appreciative of that, because not that I would want it to happen to anyone, but if that was the way that I had to go in order to get it, then that was the way I had to go in order to get it. So I have no regrets about that. And so things like this that I did go through affected my body in a very direct way. And so the artwork would tie into that, and it still continues to tie into that. And it's almost like I'm going to have to put a stop on it because things keep coming, and I just have to like mix it, and then maybe do a second book on relationships or something. For instance, one of the things that has triggered, because I actually do reading of Grey's Anatomy, the anatomy book. For me, it's enjoyable sometimes. And when I read it, I'm looking at, okay, what did they say about how the heart works and how it has an inlet and an outlet, and how so then I always see it through a spiritual lens. So I'm thinking, okay, you got to be able to let love in, you got to be able to let love go, or things go from the heart that aren't healthy from you. So it's a pumping action, and it's something that happens constantly. So maybe we're constantly monitoring the heart. So I look at it that way. There is a piece behind me on the wall that's called Basin, and it's featuring the pelvis area that I did a pastel drawing of, but that piece is more about how we get here, the portal through which we get here. That could be a male, it could be a female, but the regenerative organs are involved in allowing us to get here, and we come here, I think, as spirit, which is the stars behind it. You come as a star, an energy, and then you eventually form inside of your mother and then come out in human form. But the stuff that is the energy is much more powerful, I believe, because it lives on, much more powerful than the physical body, much more enduring also than the physical body. There is another piece behind me in the black frame. It's called Transforming into Light. And when I did that, I thought about how everyone eventually will transform into light. Like I said, your body leaves you, spirit goes. I believe it goes back to the light source. But I think some of us, I believe I'm one of them, is working on doing it here and now. I don't know if you want to call it living a mystic lifestyle or whatever, but working on doing it here and now. And so, because there are moments, especially when I'm in deep meditation, where I actually feel like I don't know if it's blissed out or whatever, but that I go into this other space, whatever that is. And for me, it's enjoyable. And sometimes it's feeling my ancestors. Sometimes it's feeling the connection with the one. Sometimes it's all of it. It all depends. But transforming into light is about and I also think that when one shifts, what happens with the physical body? What happens with the mind? What happens with the emotions? It actually does physiologically change up stuff inside of the body. And that's why you can have two different people that go into the hospital at the same time, at the same age, for the same thing, and equal or basic same sort of injuries, but one will come out okay and then the other one won't. And I think a lot of it has to do with how one thinks and how one feels. And of course, the strength of the physical body in and of itself. But when it's equal like that across the board, I tend to think a lot of that healing, doctors can stitch you up, but the healing is something that's it's whole other thing in terms of the body actually mending itself back together. Being at home, writing, but being at home and also being able to create. And my biggest passion in teaching, even though I'm an artist, my biggest passion is actually teaching the African American history and the African American art. And I think because it is so connected to how I think, how I operate, and the spirit that I live in.